Well, here we are. This is this is podcast number one, or actually podcast number two, because we have one posted from Two Witnesses Live. So I'm Dr. Sean Michael Greener, um, called by two nicknames: the Ninja Pastor, which if you listen to the Two Witnesses Live podcast, you'll see how I got that nickname, and then the Good Doctor. And I did a lot of counseling, and somebody kept referring me to that, and I said, "Well, why is that? Why are you calling me that?" And they said, "Because you're the only one that's worked so far." So I don't think that's a me thing. I think it's a God thing. I know it's a God thing. I mean, I'm no superstar when it comes to all that. But that being said, um, here we go. And I did a podcast and a radio show several years ago, and I got really, really sick. Got hurt real bad in a crash, and permanently and totally disabled, brain injury, spinal cord injury, um, thoracic injury, thoracic aortic aneurysm, and left side messed up, and messed up my face. And you're probably thinking, well, why didn't they fix it? Yeah, Mama said they should have. Anyway, so today, um, the first podcast that's listed here uh, on the God and Country, the collision of faith and politics. By the way, look, I know it's a gift now for those of you who are here that didn't know me from before, one of the 5.2 million subscribers. Um, if you want to know the truth, everybody thought I'd be dead by now. So I'm still here. Um, it's a struggle. It's a super struggle. I'm not going to lie to you. It's super hard. Now, you don't know me. If you don't know me, if you do know me, then great. But, and by the way, if you know me and you're here, thank you. If you didn't know me, but you were told about this, put in comments who told you. But anyway, hit like and subscribe. And I know that's a gift at this stage, hitting subscribe and like and the little bell. Um, I'm going to be doing content every week, sometimes more than once a week, as I'm able. As I said, I was supposed to be dead by now. Most doctors had me dead long ago. So God has other plans. I don't know what his plans are for me, but I'll take it. I have a grandson that I got to see by living this long. Got to see my daughter get married. Got to see my son in a great job. And I got to see a lot of things. My wife loves her job, and I have dear friends who I've been able to be with them when they suffered great loss and when they had great joy. So I'm thankful to God for that. So God and Country, the collision of faith and politics. Why in the world should you watch this? It's not going to be fancy. I no longer have producers or directors or any of that. I don't have any of that anymore. This is just raw and real, and as good as I can do with my limited ability. All of that said to say, a lot of people on the Two Witnesses Live channel were saying I'm on that channel every Monday. This coming, this coming Monday, and then also I'll have some Tuesdays where I'm on there. And usually I'm on in the morning around 9 a.m. Eastern Standard Time, but I will be on a March 4th. Super exciting. This coming Monday, we're going to have Navy SEAL and attorney Bill Brown. I'm not going to give you his bio just yet. It's amazing. Bill is with the Parlator law firm, which successfully represented Eddie Gallagher. And he was a Navy SEAL chief and an amazing guy, utterly an amazing guy. So all of that said to say, we're super excited for March 4th because on March 4th in the evening, we're going to do a live show with a longtime buddy of mine. Really love this dude, Rick Green. Rick is with Wall Builders Live with David Barton. One of these days I'll get Mr. Barton to be on here, although he told me not to call him Mr. Barton. I still am going to call him Mr. Barton, one of the greatest historians in history, and really a powerful, powerful speaker. Rick is too, absolutely 100%. And Rick travels all over the country with his family. doing a podcast or doing live shows called Constitution Live. He also is one of the founders of the Patriot Academy. So I don't want to tell you too much about that because good lands. I'm so excited about that. Also, am planning on having someone on by the name of William Federer. Bill Federer, great guy. He was on my radio show a bunch of times. We did some live events and in-person live events, and really an unbelievable guy. And I'm going to have him I'm pretty sure we're going to have him on to talk about the Islam, to give you the real deal on Islam. And that one's going to be drinking from a fire hose. And Rick Green too, Bill Brown too, they're going to go after it. Bill Brown, we're going to talk about 3 things. I'm not going to tell you what those are. Oof. Powerful stuff. And I know I have a shadow here. People are going to be like, oh, we can't see you. Yeah. Or some of you are going to be like, is there any way you can hide that? But this is the best I can do. I don't have all my resources in place just yet. Anyway, so today, I talked about another, I think it was a couple weeks ago, Dr. Skip Moen was on the Two Witnesses Live podcast with me and Christopher. And what a podcast. Wow, it was amazing. Dr. Moen was one of my professors. Very, very blessed to have him. But what a lightning rod, right? For a lot of people. And then part of that, after that, I talked about Religious Rottweilers. The following Monday, I talked about Religious Rottweilers. And boy, did that hurt a lot of feelings on the good Christian, onward Christian soldiers. Boy, some folks were really feelings hurt on that one. Hey, they said I was name calling Religious Rottweilers. I made the name up. I trademarked it. I love Rottweilers, but Religious Rottweilers, not so much. So this is a follow-on to that because I felt like maybe need a little bit more information here. Maybe you need a little bit more to chew on. You know what I'm saying? And I think that, and I get it. I get how. Look. If you're not used to the kind of teaching that we did there, and if you're not used to some of the concepts that we brought forward, especially if you've never studied the biblical languages, Hebrew, Greek, Aramaic, if you've never done that, then this is all totally new to you. And the thing is, you got to remember, the Bible was, it was inspired in Hebrew and Aramaic. And of course, it was translated to Greek and then other languages after that. But that transition from Hebrew and Aramaic to any of the other languages is huge. And so you have to really kind of understand what we're dealing with there. So it's a lot to chew. I know that it is. So 1 Corinthians 13:12 goes this way. For now we see only a reflection as in a mirror. Then we shall see face to face. Now I know in part, then I shall know fully, even as I am fully known. Key word there is known. So what does that mean as rendered originally in the Hebrew language? The Hebrew culture, the Hebrew thought. Because remember, that's where all this stuff happened. These people not only spoke Hebrew language, they not only lived the Hebrew culture, but they thought in a Hebrew way, which is very, very different. Very different. The language in and of itself is a phenomenal language, but it's so radically different from anything really that you've probably ever known. And so we have a terror of being fully and completely known by God. Known, that word known, really dig in on that, the word known. Known by God. We're terrified of that. But how about known by each other? I mean, we're terrified of that. Hugely afraid of people finding out who we really are. This verse reminds us that we have limitations, right? In our current understanding and promise, there's the promise of a deeper, more complete comprehension in the future, known, right? We're going to understand things in a deeper way, completely. So we're going to have a complete comprehension of the future, and we're going to have a better comprehension of the now. When we get to that spot, we're going to have that. We're going to have that. Known is going to mean we're going to... Have you figured out known is very important here? It speaks to the idea of faith, hope, and the eventual personal and relational clarity that will come as we know God deeper and as we realize God knows us at our full depth. What is scary for someone, I think it's for anybody. I think I can go out on a limb and say it's for anybody. It's not just me. It can't possibly just be me. But the scary thing is for us, is for someone knowing the real us here and now in this raw realm, right? That's the last thing we want people to know. Now, in the original Hebrew, Adam and Eve, we're going to call them Adam and Eve, not their names, but that's the names they were assigned, put on clothes after their sin because they went from being completely transparent with God to being afraid, naked and afraid, right? But then they put on loincloth and had to explain that. So if we're transparent, we are not afraid. I know it sounds crazy. Excuse me. But the more transparent we are and okay with that, the better. You know, why? Because we don't have any secrets. If we're totally transparent, we don't have any secrets to be found out. My wife and I watched this show. I won't say the name of the show, but it's kind of a reality show. It is a reality show. And on this show, it's very interesting. It's a dating for millionaires. And, people will put on this fake deal, this persona. And it's unfortunate that they do that because every time it gets found out. Every single time. And it's a shame. And they never find who they're really wanting. Or they'll pretend they want this one thing that sounds a lot better than what they really want is a booty call. Not for nothing. So our human condition, that's how we naturally are, right? I used to counsel literally hundreds, if not thousands of folks. And I found that our human condition, what we do is we hide the bad from the rest of the world, from our friends, from our family, and stupidly, for whatever reason. And look, it's not just you, it's me too. Stupidly, we think we can conceal ourselves from God. What are our hidden sins, our hidden agendas? Avraham Heschel, in his book, Moral Grandeur, and again, Dr. Skip Moen inspired a lot of this through his teaching that I sat under for many years. And he introduced, any of his students, it's a challenge. He was really one of the hardest professors I've ever had. And because he makes you read so much. So you're reading all this really hard stuff and your mind is being bent. So, this book, Moral Grandeur, it's a tough one. But Heschel says in his book, Moral Grandeur, he says, scratch the surface of any person and you come upon sorrow, frustration, unhappiness. That's on page 146. The world has forgotten what it means to be human. The gap is widening. The abyss is within itself. That's on page 259. I want you to think about those things, like take them in to your heart a little bit. Christians seem to have forgotten that in our pursuit of knowing God, to know God is to become truly human. Now, that's going to freak your freak. A lot of you are going to be, multiple explosions of the brain cavity. And look, I get it. Your cranium is. These are things you're not used to hearing. You're not used to hearing that last statement, that in our pursuit of knowing God, to know God is to become truly human. We're animals, basically, and people hate to hear that, but we are until we learn to know God, right? We act on our base feelings and intent and all of those things until we come to know God. And the more we get to know God, the more human we are. And God made us to be transparent with Him and human with each other in humility. Because although we don't want anybody to know the natural person whose skin is scarred below the surface, this is the only way we can be who and what God called us, what he created us to be. And it's easy to throw rocks at the ones whose sin is revealed, right? Somebody has a moral failing, like, you know, some major moral failing, or somebody gets caught with porn and they're the big Christian. Listen, I used to counsel for an organization that confidentially counseled world-renowned ministers and faith leaders who had some sort of failing. And so I would come in and kind of triage the situation, and then I would set about on a path to counsel them. And then other people would handle different things that were involved. And we're talking about multi-million-dollar ministries, humongous ministries. Well, I say that it's not just preachers, right? It's all kinds of people. It's maybe a deacon at the church or somebody who holds some sort of important role, or maybe they're just outward about their faith, but then all of a sudden they get fired from their job because porn's found on their computer. And maybe the paper, maybe they report it to the paper. Maybe it's an important job and they report it to the paper. Oh, this is why, because we found porn on the thing. Or maybe there's a big blow up and their spouse finds porn or whatever. It's not just porn. It could be any number of things. Maybe they struggle with drinking, right? Maybe they have a drug issue. And look, it's easy to throw rocks at the one whose sin is revealed, right? They're at their lowest. And Christians, man, I'll tell you, I have this saying. Christians are the worst to Christians, right? They're the worst. We treat each other horribly. We don't love each other and care for each other and protect each other and help to restore each other like we're supposed to. We live in terror of being the ones whose skin is scratched and peeled back to show our secret sins. And you know what? Religious Rottweilers, they bark the loudest, most often because their secrets are the deepest and the darkest. I want to say that when I hear a religious Rottweiler, somebody telling other people how wrong they are and how not Christian enough they are, or how, any number of things, people love to throw rocks. I see that and I'm always suspicious of it because I think, well, are you really who you say you are? Let me say this, and in counseling, I don't know how many people, hundreds, if not thousands, probably thousands. Depression is the number one disease in this country. Happiness is the world's number one objective, right? Advertisers know this, and their systems create a culture of dissatisfaction. You heard that right. Advertisers know this, and their systems, the things that they use to connect with us, they create a culture of dissatisfaction. Oh, if I only had that car, if I only had that book, if I only had that job. Right? And it's easy to do because most people are terrorized by themselves. Why? Because they know themselves on the inside, skin and soul peeled back to the real. And advertisers can kind of peel at that skin very easily. That's what they study in college. So do you remember the passage in Scripture in which Yeshua writes in the sand as the religious Rottweilers, the Pharisees, they were stoning this woman who was caught in adultery? Yeah, she was caught. She was caught in a moral failing, right? And Yeshua was there. And by the way, the scripture I'm referring to is John chapter 8, verses 1 through 11. It is the story of the woman caught in adultery. And this is where Yeshua intervenes when the scribes and the Pharisees bring her to him, testing him to see if he would uphold the law of Moshe, which is Moses, his actual name. If Moses walked in this room right now and I went, "Oh, Moses, how you doing?" He would look at me like, "Who are you talking to?" I don't know if that's how he talks. I'm taking a leap there. But anyways, real name is Moshe. Instead of condemning her, by the way, Yeshua challenges the crowd. Let me read it to you really, really fast. But Yeshua went to the Mount of Olives. At daybreak, he appeared again in the temple court where all the people gathered around him, and he sat down to teach them. The Torah teachers and the Prushim, which are Pharisees, brought in a woman who had been caught committing, and by the Torah teachers, they're like rabbis and the teachers and then the Pushim, Pharisees. They brought in a woman who had been caught committing adultery and made her stand in the center of the group. Nothing like embarrassing her. Why not? Then they said to him, Rabbi, this woman was caught in the very act of committing adultery. Now, in our Torah, Moshe commanded that such a woman be stoned to death. What do you say about it? Well, they said this to trap him so that they might have ground for bringing charges against him. But Yeshua bent down and began writing in the dust with his finger. When they kept questioning him, he straightened up and he said to them, the one of you who is without sin, let him be the first to throw a stone at her. Then he bent down and he wrote in the dust again. On hearing this, they began to leave one by one, the older ones first, until he was left alone with the woman still there. Standing up, Yeshua said to her, where are they? Has no one condemned you? She said, no one, sir. Yeshua said, neither do I condemn you. Now go and don't sin anymore. Now, the modern analogy of Yeshua writing in the sand is, okay, good Christian religious Rottweilers, how about handing me your smartphone? How about your tablet? How about your laptop? How about your work computer? How about that computer or that phone you don't think your spouse knows about? Let me do a quick search of your hard drives. Let me do a quick deep search of your hard drives. Let's see what's on there. And look, this often exposes the real that you'd kill to avoid people seeing, knowing, and judging. Let's go to Matthew 5:48. But I tell you, love your enemies. Pray for those who persecute you. Then you will become children of your Father in heaven. Whoa, wait a second now. So that's a condition, right? Yeshua says, but I tell you, love your enemies. That's the thing. Pray for those who persecute you. Second part of the thing. Then you will become children of your Father in heaven. See, Christians love to skip over that. They love to skip over the love part. They go, oh, well, you got to judge. You got to judge. Now, it's more than just lovey-dovey. You got to judge. But we skip over that part. We skip over, this is how we become human. This is how we become children of God. For he makes his sun shine on good and bad people alike, and he sends rain to the righteous and to the righteous alike. He sends rain to the righteous and the unrighteous alike. What reward do you get if you love only those who love you? Huh? Right? Look, what do we expect here? What do we expect? Well, love the people who love you back. Love the lovely. Oh, I can do that. That's so super easy. I'll do that today. I'll do it right now. Man, boy, I wish I'd have known this was going to be this easy. It's not that. But a lot of people think that it is. The religious Rottweilers, the people who are always standing on the porch of the church, barking at people who don't have the right haircut, who don't have the right clothes, who maybe have tattoos, who didn't have the right background, who haven't learned all the church words, and maybe they don't have it together yet. What reward do you get if you love only those who love you? Why, even tax collectors do that. Remember, back then and in this culture, tax collectors were the worst. And if you are friendly only to your friends, are you doing anything out of the ordinary? Even the Goyim do that, Gentiles. Therefore, be perfect, just as your Father in heaven is perfect. Now we get to where people, the religious Rottweilers, love to throw rocks. They love this. They say our goal is to be perfect. We're to be perfect. God expects us to be perfect. Does Yeshua here and God in Leviticus mean he expects us to be perfect, as in sinless, without blot or blemish? We do everything right? No. Perfect is mistranslated by Aquinas in the Via Negativa. The Hebrew word is correctly translated as holy, and holy, correctly translated, doesn't mean without blame, doesn't mean absolute perfection or sinlessness. It means devoted. It means devoted. Even in Greek, it doesn't mean perfect. It means complete. Yeshua and God are asking here, can you be devoted to me as I am devoted to you? Can you be devoted to me as I am to you? This is what God's asking. Matthew Wilson, a forensic scientist, he lives in Israel. He wrote a book called The Simplicity of Holiness. And Dr. Moen recommended we get that book and read it. Woo! It's hard to find, by the way. But if you find it, yeah, it's a tough one to read. But he's a forensic scientist, so he researches words to their very deepest level, all the way back to the beginning. The whole etymology, the culture behind it, the whole deal. So the simplicity of holiness, in which he researched this word devoted, the word holy in its use, and he found it to mean devoted. Now, the question is, can we manage that? Can we manage to be as devoted to God as God is devoted to you? I mean, that sounds crazy. Can you be devoted to your community of fellow believers? We can't be devoted to God if we can't do that. We cannot be devoted to God if we cannot be devoted to our fellow believers, our community of believers. Look, if you can't be devoted to them, you can't be devoted to God. If God wanted perfection, none of us would enter his kingdom. Can you manage devotion? You know, Martin Luther taught that we should be perfect, such that we are defeated even before we begin. Right? And I'm going to do a teaching on Martin Luther and why maybe you don't hold him up so high to be this great guy. He did a lot for the church, no doubt about it. But the fact of the matter is, not quite what you think he was. So Luther's and the church's teachings that we're born into sin such that God can punish us for even sinning, even at all, anything. That's why. This is what he's saying. Is you were born into this. You were born into sin. You're not perfect. You never will be, but you're supposed to try. But because you were born into sin, guess what? God's going to punish you for sinning wholly and completely because of that. That would make it the worst thing in the world even to be born. Right? Is there anything worse than knowing you're going to fail your whole life from day one, start to finish? You're going to be born and you're going to sin because that's your normal human failing. And I'm not saying here that we shouldn't try not to sin. Not at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'll do teaching on that in the future. But I want you to understand that there's been a mistranslation here of several words that make a big, big difference. Not for nothing. Don't you think the churches, the early churches, not the Acts church, but the first beginnings of the larger church, there was a coalescing between them and the government. There was often some connection there. And of course the governments, the leaders, the kings, they love that. They love to be able to manipulate the people by having them sort of under this thumb of you're never going to make it out of this. So I want to ask you a really real question, and in the comments, feel free to write your questions. I want to come back and I want to answer all of them. Be kind in the comments. By the way, I don't think you can comment. I don't know if you can, maybe you can, but we're not doing this as a live, but during the live, you can't comment unless you're a subscriber. So if you would be so kind as to hit like, hit subscribe, share it, click that little bell, that would be awesome. So I have to ask you, has anyone in your life ever expected you to be perfect? Anyone? How about your parents? How about maybe your parents were constantly disappointed in you because they expected perfection from you? How about a spouse? Would God expect perfection from you, knowing there's no hope in the world of achieving it? Right? If your spouse is only ever going to be disappointed in you if they think, oh, you have to be this all of the time. There'd be a lot of disappointed folks out there. Oh, wait, there are. Would God expect perfection from you, knowing there's no hope? No hope in the world of you ever achieving it, not even for a whole day. No. When you look in the mirror, who or what do you see? Do you see a friend? Do you see an enemy? Or do you see a judge? been said, you do what you are. Finding our faith in God and of God is us discovering who we uniquely are, and that is who God has destined us to be. Our faith is in our finding out who that person is in the mirror, who God says we are, not who society or who our parents or a friend or coworkers or neighbors say you are. It's who God says we are. The real question is, and this is the tough one, are we hearing who the world tells us we are? Or are we hearing who we are according to God? I am pretty confident that's the one we should trust. I'm looking forward to meeting with you here every week, maybe a few times a week if I can. And I look forward to the community growing. And I hope that you will subscribe. This doesn't do anything unless you subscribe. Bottom line. It just doesn't. It becomes hidden in the millions of other podcasts well beyond. And look, if you don't think it's worth it, I understand. You're not going to agree with everything I say. I'm just going to tell you that right now. In the books that I've written and published, you're not going to agree with everything in that. In my speeches and in my sermons, you're not going to agree with the interviews. You're not going to agree with everything. Look, you can't agree with yourself half the time. Let's be honest. You're not going to agree with everything. But we learn. We learn when we dig deep. And we challenge ourselves. I love the Bible. I wouldn't have shelves full of Bibles if I didn't love Scripture. And I love learning about it, and I love teaching about it. I'm glad that you joined me today. Tell all your millions of friends. I'll be glad to have them. God bless you.